There aren't many moments in television history that have impacted me as much as Howard Hamlin's death in Season 6, Episode 7, Plan and Execution of Better Call Saul. Howard Hamlin started as the character that you just didn't like at all in Season 1 of Better Call Saul, and then as that went on, you grew to love him, and he ended up growing to become one of my all-time favorite characters, and that was completely by design and really is a feat of the writers. I talked about that in this video, but in today's video, I want to talk about Howard Hamlin's death and how it was a very impactful moment, not just in Better Call Saul, but in TV history, and how it subverts expectations correctly, and how some shows don't get that right. You see, there's a power to subverting expectations, but more often than not, you see shows doing it poorly. This is not an example of that. So Howard Hamlin was introduced in Season 1 of Better Call Saul as really the antagonist, or at least the perceived antagonist. And this was specifically against Jimmy, who we were following because Jimmy was trying to get into HHM, but Howard seemed to be the person that was resisting him joining the firm. Later on, we find out it was Chuck McGill the whole time that was behind all of that, and Howard actually really did like Jimmy, but Jimmy never sees this. And so over the span of the series, we see Howard come to terms with this. We see Howard come to terms with how Chuck McGill was, and we see him go through a lot, and that helps us understand the character, and it helps us grieve with him and feel sympathetic for him, really, in the end. A moment that comes to mind with that is the moment where Howard Hamlin is offering Jimmy McGill a job at HHM later on after Chuck McGill passes away, and Howard gets completely berated by Jimmy. You felt horrible for Howard in this moment, but you also recognize that he's being the bigger man walking away. And that just shows fantastic character development. And that's just a very small example out of the many that are out there. But it really isn't until Season 6 of Better Call Saul that we fully grasp Howard Hamlin, what he's going through, and we could really sympathize with him because of it. Over the span of Season 6, we see Jimmy McGill pulling many schemes on Howard to try to undermine his career. The biggest of that being what happened in the episode Plan and Execution. So the episode starts out with Jimmy and Kim trying to finalize Casimiro with a cast, and they're trying to get everything right for those pictures, and we come to find out in that episode that Howard's PI is actually in cahoots with Jimmy. And this all boils down to the moment where Howard is in the room with Judge Casimiro, and he's accusing him of taking a bribe from Jimmy, only to realize that the pictures that he got from his PI were just pictures of Jimmy handing a man a Frisbee. And it was one of the funniest moments I've ever seen in TV history. It was so funny, but it was also so awkward. And in a panic state, Howard runs upstairs to his office to try to figure out what is going on, and eventually he discovers that it was Jimmy messing with him. The PI wasn't real, it was a doxed number, and Jimmy set up everything for him to fall in line. First off, that is one of the most tragic things that could happen before a death scene, so just that on top of what comes after is big enough. And then to make matters worse, a drunken Howard, who's clearly upset over the incident that had occurred, righteously so, shows up at Jimmy's door and is at the wrong place at the wrong time when Lalo walks in the door. Not even having a second to finish his sentence, Lalo pulls out a gun, shoots Howard, and that is the end of his story. And I think one of the biggest things to me is that this moment in TV actually felt real. When I was watching it, of course I never expected him and Lalo to be in the same room, but there they were, and there was Lalo pulling out a gun, and that was literally like me watching something happen to someone I know. It felt so real because the circumstances, even though they are exaggerated for fiction, they do seem really practical. Howard was in the wrong place at the wrong time, had no idea what this criminal was doing, and, you know, he pulls out a gun and kills him. And the scary thing is something like that could really happen to any one of us in the real world. So seeing that on screen really heightened everyone's senses. And you gotta hand that to the writers, who did an absolutely fantastic job of portraying this in the most real way. Even the way he falls and hits his head, and even the way it's portrayed after, and Jimmy's and Kim's responses to it, it's just real. It feels real. It felt like I was watching a live leak. I don't know about anyone else, but I think it was definitely one of the more shocking and real moments in TV history. And, you know, I've seen a lot of plot twists. I've seen a lot of things from Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead. I've seen The Sopranos, Boardwalk Empire, you know, the list, it goes on and on. I've seen all shows where there's moments of subverting our expectations. And this one was just unlike any of the others because Better Call Saul is not a show where people constantly are subverting your expectations. It's a pretty straightforward lawyer show. And when you have these moments that are so genuine and so humbling, I guess you could say, it really shocks you and it really sobers you in the moment. I remember when that scene happened, I was left jaw dropped, like just straight up in awe for a good couple minutes, and I had a hard time sleeping that night because the image of Lalo shooting him was playing in my head, and it actually disturbed me. And that's coming from someone who, like mentioned, has seen things like Glenn's death in The Walking Dead, seen all the brutal moments that are in Game of Thrones, and much more. But something about this actually felt real, whereas the other shows just didn't. And what that comes down to is a crack team of writers who know the story, who know these people, and who act like these people are real people. And that's one of the things I commend the most about Breaking Bad's universe is the writers, along with Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould, they don't write before. Yeah, maybe they have big moments that they'd like to happen, but they don't write before. They don't plan out too far. They write as they go. They write and they say, what would Jimmy do in this circumstance? If Lalo walks in the apartment, what would Lalo do if he saw some random guy who's just another number on his hit list? You know, what would he do? And it really boils down to realistic scenarios because you think, what would you do in that scenario if you were Jimmy? What would you do if you were the way Lalo is? What would you do if you were Howard? And I think that really is a great way to be writing shows. And in a world where there are so many reboots going on right now, in a world where there are so many cash grabs and so much metrics saying, oh, we need to do this from these big executives, seeing something like this, you could tell where the creation lied. You could tell that Peter Gould and Vince Gilligan had passion for this story, and as well as all the writers like Tom Schnoz and some of the other writers on the show, you could tell that they cared for this story immensely. And obviously some of it is, okay, well, how do we draw an audience this season? That stuff is normal. It's planning. It's really creating a TV show is a business. But the creatives really care about this from a story perspective, and I don't feel that that's the case with all shows. And look, I've never been in a writing room. I don't know the actual conversations that go on between all shows, even shows where I think they don't care. So I can't even begin to say that other shows don't. The point I'm trying to make is you could see that there was a spark in the writer's room for this show. You could really tell. And a moment like Howard Hamlin's death is just so impactful because you could tell that the writers gave this so much thought, so much care, and when it came to putting it on screen, the actors were so dedicated to the moment. And it wasn't just this, but there was an amalgamation, I guess I could say, of moments that made me realize Howard Hamlin is one of the better characters in TV history. Not often do you see, number one, an antagonist go from, well, being an antagonist to being pretty much a protagonist and one of the guys you root for the most. That's a really hard thing to do in a TV show, and not many shows have accomplished that well. The only other one that I could think that comes to mind is Negan from The Walking Dead, but redemption arcs like that are just naturally hard to do. And I guess I wouldn't really call Howard's a redemption arc. We just didn't really know him, so we got to learn more as the seasons went on. But the point I'm making is it's not that common for you to see someone you're supposed to not like in the beginning turn into someone you're supposed to love, and they did it very well here. And that is an amazing thing that Patrick Fabian brought to screen too. It's not just the writers. Patrick Fabian played this, he portrayed it, and he did it perfectly. And you could also see that in Bob Odenkirk's and Rhea Seehorn's performances. I don't know if I pronounced her name right. Is it Ray? I don't know what it is, to be honest with you. But you could see how shocked they were and how well rehearsed this was. And that's also attributed to the fact that Bob Odenkirk, Rhea Seehorn, and Patrick Fabian all lived together while they were filming the show. They built an excellent bond. It was very clear that they're professionals who rehearsed this way too much, which is a good good thing. It's not a bad thing. And it really shows on screen. When you have this big, impactful moment, it feels real because they had so much time to block it. They had so much time to act it because they were living it. And that's something that you also don't get with a lot of TV shows. I think that, combined with the writers who gave this their all and put so much effort into this, and they're clearly seasoned after writing something like Breaking Bad and finalizing 6 seasons of Better Call Saul, you could really see how professional these people are, and that was really lightning struck in a bottle. You don't get that often with TV.
Lightning bolt shoot from my fingertips!
And that's one of the many reasons that I think Better Call Saul is such a magical show. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't really go in with too strong of a script. I had an outline of a couple things I wanted to say. I think this was the prime example of subverting your expectations the right way, and how a lot of shows do get it wrong. I mean, look at Game of Thrones. The overall point I'm making is you don't see it done well often, and this is the pinnacle of subverting your expectations done right. Like, if you're a writer or you're a new show starting out and you're trying to figure out how to write, how to do things the right way, Better Call Saul should be your god. Like, it really should. Everything is right about that show. The writing, the acting, the cinematography, the production, everything. I can't think of one thing that was flawed in the show. I really can't. And I gotta say, one more time, the writers and the creative team who worked on this show, kudos to them, because they turned what is a normal character death in most other shows into something that felt like I was watching in my actual living room. And that is a crazy feat to achieve, let alone achieving something where you turn an antagonist into a protagonist. Those are very big feats, and Better Call Saul absolutely nailed them. I love Better Call Saul. It's my all-time favorite show, and I'm spoiled. I don't know when I'm ever going to find something better than Better Call Saul. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about. Shout out to everyone who worked on the show. They did a fantastic job, and I hope to see more from Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould soon. I would love to follow anything those two make. And yeah, if you like this video, make sure you like it. If you didn't like it, let me know in the comments. Give me a dislike. I would appreciate it. I want to start a conversation about this. I'd love to know your thoughts about Better Call Saul, about Howard Hamlin's death, and all the above. So let's start a healthy discussion down there in the comments, and I look forward to talking to you there. In the meantime, thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel if you want to talk all things TV and film. And until the next one, I'll talk to you later. Peace out.